So your circadian rhythm, I kind of describe this as it's the blueprint for how your body does everything. So if you think of circadian alignment from the perspective, you have your master clock, which is in your brain, and then you have all the peripheral clocks, which are in the rest of your organs, in the rest of your body. And if you think of the master clock like air traffic control at an airport, and all your organs are the planes taking off and landing, if you're trying to run an airport without air traffic control, it's going to be chaos. No one knows where they're going. So the circadian alignment piece to me is a huge foundation because it's going to help give the right instructions to the body. What am I supposed to be doing at different times of the day? And that is, to me, the foundation. Everything else then will align with that, but we have to have the right instructions.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Business, Your Next Level. I'm your host, Eunicia Peret, and today I have Brooke Erickson in the studio with me. She's a functional nutritionist and the creator of the Quantum Nourishment Framework, a unique approach that integrates nutrition, circadian alignment to restore deep vitality, and so many other things for her clients. Here's one of the things that I love about her. Her grounded presence and joy for the space enables her to support clients navigating gut and hormone imbalances, chronic inflammation, anxiety, and very, very important for many of us, burnout, helping them rebuild energy, improve sleep, regulate nervous systems, and reconnect with their body's innate intelligence. And with that, Brooke, welcome to the show. We're going to have an amazing episode today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you land in this space? And the reason I'll preface it in this space is because we've all met functional medicine physicians, integrative this, integrative that. And the reality is that very few individuals are able to transcend the gamut of all sorts of different things that arguably they all need to be addressed, and yet they're all interconnected. And when you and I first spoke, what was beautiful is that it feels like I'm taken right back to our conversation. The way you spoke reminded me of the way that I speak with our clients about everything finance, because everything is integrated, and you're seeing that from a medical standpoint. So talk to us a little bit about how did you get into this space?
Yeah, so I first got into it because my grandmother passed away very young at the age of 65 of lymphoma cancer. And I'm like a mini me spitting image of my grandmother. And so something just sparked in me where I realized, oh, wow, those are my genes. I want to live a long, healthy life. I want to figure out how to do it better. So that was kind of the initial spark. And then through my own journey of studying and getting into it and going to school, I actually experienced my own season of burnout and was working with a functional medicine practitioner who I was interning with because I had just finished school and I was just getting started. And I was able to dig into nutrigenomics and understand my genes and methylation and adrenal dysfunction. And I was able to use functional medicine tools to come out of that. And then after being in practice for several years, working with clients, I really started to see that I would have these clients and they would be the star client. You know, they did all the diet things correct. We healed their gut. Their supplements were dialed in. And yet they would still have these issues that would come up. They would still rebound or something else would come up. Like we'd fix this thing and then all of a sudden something else popped up. And so through my own journey of my own, emotional, spiritual, just working on myself, I started learning more about the mind-body connection more and how big of an impact that plays on our health. And the ways that when we're out of alignment, when we're out of energetic alignment, it really can be the underlying root for physical ailments to start showing up in the body. And so I had this aha moment where I was like, I can't just stay in the physical box of how to help people because I'm evolving in how I'm even my own journey of how I'm becoming the healthiest version of me. And so I needed to take everyone along that journey with me. And so I really just started studying nervous system regulation and energetic alignment through a tool I love called human design. And I just started kind of integrating all of these together.
I love your journey. First of all, the fact that it started with something so personal. You've kind of gone down different paths, understanding and working with some of the experts in their own individual field to then come back to a kind of common denominator, as I'll call it, to identify where do things spring out from. In an environment where everybody's chasing shiny objects, talk to us about the importance of the foundations of health. And I know you and I went into quite a bit of depth and detail on this, and it was so beautiful. Talk to our audience why chasing shiny objects is not the place to start, and maybe even talk about what are some of those shiny objects so that our listener can understand what those are.
Yeah. Yeah. So shiny objects to me are kind of the latest fad of whatever that might be. So it can be the latest supplement, it could be the latest biohack, it can be the latest peptide. I kind of call them band-aid approaches. They're not always band-aid. There's good use for a lot of these and they do help the body. But where I think people are getting a little lost is they're jumping straight to those and they're not working on the foundations of health. And I've really started to focus more on helping people build the foundation first, which to me is circadian alignment is huge. Our circadian rhythm plays such a significant role in the foundations of health. And if your circadian alignment is off, which is very common these days with blue lights and screens, and we're indoors way too much, we're not getting sunlight, mineral balance through hydration, proper hydration is really important. Most people are not getting properly hydrated and they're not getting the right minerals for the body. Sleep, stress, obviously food and nourishment is really important. Blood sugar stability. These things are really foundational. And so if you don't have those things aligned and you're maybe someone who wants to lose weight and you've really been struggling and you're going straight to a GLP-1 without doing those foundational pieces, you might get some results losing weight, but you're going to be reliant on that in order to maintain that. And you didn't actually fix the reason that you're having weight loss resistance in the first place. So I'm really trying to help people get back to the basics, what I call it, kind of the foundations of health, and then go from there. Then if you need to look at, a peptide or look at something like that, then that might make more sense. But the nervous system regulation piece is huge. The energetic alignment piece is huge as the core kind of foundation of that.
Where should a person start looking? Let's assume that maybe they've started working, maybe they're working with an integrative medicine physician, or maybe they started working with someone doing something to improve their health. And they have this perception that the thing is the thing. And what we know based on what you said and based on what, all of the studies is that there's not one thing that will solve everything. How can individuals take it a step back to really decipher what is the first, we'll call it domino effect, that if addressed can actually help improve everything else before and without necessarily changing the biochemistry of the body?
Yeah. Well, I think the nervous system is a huge place to start. And so there's different ways that we can support the nervous system. A lot of people these days think of it as just doing breath work and that kind of thing. And that is really helpful. But your nervous system actually is very aligned with your circadian rhythm. So your circadian rhythm, I kind of describe this as it's the blueprint for how your body does everything. So if you think of circadian alignment from the perspective, you have your master clock, which is in your brain, and then you have all the peripheral clocks, which are in the rest of your organs, in the rest of your body. And if you think of the master clock like air traffic control at an airport, and all your organs are the planes taking off and landing. If you're trying to run an airport without air traffic control, it's going to be chaos. No one knows where they're going. So the circadian alignment piece to me is a huge foundation because it's going to help give the right instructions to the body. What am I supposed to be doing at different times of the day? And that is, to me, the foundation. Everything else then will align with that, but we have to have the right instructions. That also regulates your cortisol, which cortisol is a big driver of your nervous system. So that helps to regulate cortisol. It helps to regulate melatonin and sleep. And those two things are huge for your nervous system. So those types of things that I would say are kind of where I would start if you're working with someone is really look into circadian alignment, look into the rhythm of your life and what that looks like.
Even if they're already doing whatever it is that they're doing, right?
Yes.
Add that on. Talk to us a little bit about, you have a lot of experience in this field, Brooke. Not everyone, not all experts are immediately welcoming of other ideas, especially if it's not already in their field of expertise. Not to say that they're not well intentioned, they just in some cases don't really understand that area. And so because of that, they may have more of a propensity to not necessarily get behind a new idea such as circadian rhythm or alignment and using that to even regulate the nervous system. How can individuals advocate for themselves whenever they are in that situation and perhaps they're kind of catching the headwinds of, whomever they might already be working with?
Yeah. So, I mean, you are your biggest health advocate. No one will ever care more about your health than you. So, you have to be the one that almost insists, if you feel like there's more that needs to be done and you're working with a practitioner and they're really keeping you stuck and limited and they're not open to other modalities or other ways to support your health, that might not be the best practitioner for you moving forward. You might want to find someone more aligned. And I know that sounds kind of extreme, but I really have seen so much where we put a lot of emphasis on this guru, this specialist, this person to be the one that tells us what's best for us. And we've lost that connection with our intuition and the wisdom of our body and being able to really tune in and listen to what is correct for us. And so I think that is really important. Get curious, just start from a place of curiosity. I have an insatiable curiosity. And when I start working with someone, my first question when someone comes to me and explains what's going on, I'm like, why? Okay, well, let's look at why is this happening? And if you can start coming from that place and just really getting curious and asking questions, don't just accept a diagnosis and then say, oh, I have this and identify with that. I like to shift people's mindset with that. Oh, I'm experiencing symptoms of whatever that is. And where are those symptoms coming from? I want to go ahead and figure that out and get to the root cause of why they're there in the first place. So that's kind of where I would say start. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Before we go to the second thing that you might recommend, we talked about circadian rhythm, alignment to the nervous system with the cortisol, like all the things. How can someone, if you would just be able to give them a quick, here's how you think about circadian rhythm, or maybe something specific that they can do that would immediately help change the way that number one, they see things. Number two, that will continue to pique that curiosity so that they want to deepen and learn more for themselves.
Yeah. So if you think of the day night cycle, which is essentially circadian rhythm, if you think back before we had electricity, how would you see when it got dark? How would you see during the day? So we would have candlelight or fire in the evening. And then during the day, when it was light out, that's when we would be outside. We would be doing all the things to take care of ourselves. And then when it got dark, we were going to bed. So we're meant to kind of mimic that's how our body is wired. That's how it tunes in with that light dark signal. So when you are inside and you have artificial lights and you are up, watching TV or on your phone late in the evening, you're disrupting that whole rhythm. So I think just starting with trying to understand how can I sync up with the natural rhythm of the light the best I possibly can. My most favorite tip to have people start with is get outside and watch the sunrise. If you do nothing else and you start to do that's the first step to start resyncing up that master clock. And that you can use an app. There's an app called My Circadian app. And you can use that app to find out exactly what time sunrise is where you live. And that will change obviously throughout the year.
For those of you that don't want to get another app, it's easy to even just look at your weather app, especially if you have iPhones. I can't speak for the other phones. On the iPhones is pretty simple. Obviously, what Brooke is talking about, if you get an app, you can go into a lot more level of details with, when to get outside for different types of light rays. And oh my gosh, she's just a wealth of knowledge in that space. Outside of the circadian rhythm, let's assume that, we're starting to work on it and things get lined up and we're feeling better. What is the next thing that someone should be thinking about, Brooke? Either next or to start overlaying as part of their overall approach?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of different things here. I think the circadian alignment helps with the nervous system. And then we want to move into how are you nourishing your body and stabilizing your blood sugar through making sure you're eating at the right times. And that helps with cortisol as well and that nervous system piece. And then moving into, I would say, the mineral balance, the hydration is another piece that's really, really important. Most people are overwatered plants. They're drinking a lot of water. They're very proud of all the water that they're drinking, but that water doesn't have minerals in it. And so you're just flushing out that water and it's not actually helping you to be hydrated. So that to me is huge. Your body, the voltage in your body requires these minerals. You can't function, your mitochondria can't function well. There's so many parts of your health that aren't going to be optimal if you don't have those minerals. And then finally, the energetic alignment piece is huge for me. So that can really just be as simple as just starting to look at, where am I not managing my energy well? Where do I feel burnt out? Where am I people pleasing? Where am I not taking time for myself and really giving myself rest and quiet time and alone time if that's what I feel like I need? I feel like so many people are under this pressure to go and do, and they're not in alignment with what is true and correct for them. And that starts to show up, like I said, as different health issues, burnout, etc. So just starting again to get curious and start looking at that. Like, where am I not in alignment? Where am I feeling like I'm putting other people first, or I'm saying yes to things that really don't light me up, that I'm miserable doing every single day, but I'm doing it because I feel like I have to. It's the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, all of those things that we think about through the day. And that's another way to start. Again, this relates to stress levels. It relates to your nervous system. It relates to how well are you sleeping. It's all going to impact your health. So that would be, I guess, the other kind of area I would go down. And I love, like I said, human design as a tool for that, but you don't have to even get into all of that to just start to look at the basics of how do you feel out of alignment, what feels incongruent with what is true and correct for you.
It's so beautiful what you said about speaking of the energetic alignment. Something that was going through my mind is oftentimes, and you'll hear the saying about how, the devils are in the details, and, everything is in the action that you do. You just have to take the action. The argument that I would make, knowing what I know, is that if we take the action with the wrong energetics, we will attract that energy towards us. And so, what I would challenge our listeners as you're listening to this is, when you're thinking about the energetic alignment, is just ask yourself the question. And Brooke, you mentioned it earlier. How do you show up, right? If you know that you're at a point of you're tired, you need some time to yourself, take a few moments to yourself so that when you show up for the next activity, you can show up with love, you can show up with gratitude. And when you're able to do that, everything changes. Not just in your health. Health obviously is very important. We're talking about health today. We're even seeing it on the financial side. You will literally attract different opportunities depending on how you show up through the emotional component. And that's where the energetic alignment is so critical. And yet, one of the areas that most people never really get to experience or focus on.
So true. I mean, and this is, again, through my own journey, obviously I'm working in the health space with clients, but through my own, practice of learning this and really integrating this, I mean, this has been huge for my business and really understanding how to structure my business and what is optimal for me and how to enter in the right relationships and business partnerships and who am I connecting with and what feels aligned. This doesn't just translate to health. It literally translates to everything. And I think that's been a huge game changer for me, is understanding how do I get in alignment first and then make decisions from that space that feels true and authentic for me and coming from that space. And it makes life so much easier when you start with alignment first versus chasing what other people's expectations of what you should be doing.
100%. Somebody recently was coming on with a little bit of a challenge. This particular individual said, I would challenge you to think about the way that Excelstra does things differently. Instead of kind of being the quarterback that you guys are, which clearly it's worked very well for so many different individuals, we've delivered so much value, piecemeal things apart. And just, sell one solution, get the people through the door, and then they'll see how amazing the team is and they'll want more. And I'm like, sitting with it for a couple of days and it was not feeling right. Like, no. And then we spoke with an expert that specifically focuses on energetically, if our energy is not in the right alignment to the business and vice versa, because the business itself has its own identity, then we've missed the mark. And so I went back and I said, no, absolutely not. Because what we've done is we took everything that everybody takes for granted, because it tells the ideas are people are not enough. You haven't achieved, you're not there yet. You haven't attained that yet. Versus if we shift and say, listen, you've attained beauty. You've truly attained, you've mastered wealth. You've mastered success, whatever that looks like. It's relative to everybody. Our listeners particularly are very successful business owners, entrepreneurs, physicians. You've achieved so much. If we just focus it and reshift the thinking and acknowledge and cherish what you've accomplished, and we look at how can we continue to improve perfection, we get to have fun. We literally get to have fun in creating and continuing to create that perfection, right? Elevating the perfection. Versus if we focus on, you don't have enough, you're not there yet, that's what everybody hears. And so I was able to go back to this particular individual and I said, no, we're not going to change, because what's worked so well, it's this ability for us to contribute to our clients' success. And we're going to continue doing the same. And we will simply attract the people that are meant to be for us. And there are plenty of people out there that would love to be in this game that we play. And if they don't, that's okay. They're not for us.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
talking about your business too. It's completely changed everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That
beautiful.
was even just a big shift for me. And it's not that I am not still doing nutrition work, because that's a huge part of what I do. But for me, authenticity really, there's all this other pieces of this that I feel really passionate about that I needed to bring in that felt aligned for me, even though the safe thing is to stay in my box doing nutrition that I've been doing for 10 years, and really trying to expand in how I'm helping people, because that's where my creativity comes out. That's where I feel the most authentic. And I feel like that's going to attract the people that I'm meant to serve. And if you're not in alignment, yeah, are you still going to get business and attract people? Sure. But are you helping the people you're actually here to help, that your soul came here, in a sense, to kind of help and be inspiration for? So, yeah.
Absolutely. We appreciate and we honored the box. The
Yes.
box helped us get to where we're at. There's
Yes.
nothing wrong with the box.
There's nothing wrong with the box. Yes.
We just like to stay outside of the box.
I've never been one to stay in the lines. I'm kind of a color outside the lines person. So, yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to color outside of the lines. For me, I've always stayed very neatly inside of the lines. However, I always focused on, let me get this done so that I can move to the next thing, because, the other side of the page was so beautiful, and just, the excitement of getting there. So constantly getting out of the box and being out there and having fun. So Brooke, what I'd love to know from you is, give us an example of maybe one of the most inspiring clients or cases that you worked on. Where was that person before or as you started working with him or her? And then where did they end up after you were able to go through the blueprint of how do we change the dynamics and put the domino effect in motion?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of pretty big transformations with people. I think someone that comes to mind, I'd actually been working with them for, gosh, I want to say a couple of years. And, everyone is at their own pace. And I remember she was diabetic, struggling with some different health things, very stressed with her job, very demanding job. And we kept having the conversation about circadian alignment and just start with sunrise. And I kept hammering that home, and something finally clicked. I think they wanted to put her on a new medication for her diabetes. And she finally was at this breaking point where she said, okay, I'll do whatever you say. And so I met with her 2 weeks later, and she told me the very first day that she got up and went outside for sunrise, she was someone who woke up at 3 a.m. like clockwork for years. And that was the first time she slept through the night. She didn't wake up at 3 a.m. And it was something very simple, but for her was huge, because that had been really disruptive. And she got an instant feedback from that her body was saying, yes, this is good for us. Let's keep doing it. And so she committed, and she kept getting out and going in the morning. And then she added other times that I work with people to go outside as well, and her evening in environment with the light. And she's feeling so much better. She's been able to go down on her medication. She didn't have to add that other medication. She's looking now and understanding, because this is a conversation I have sometimes too, where your work that you're doing, if it's so demanding and stressful, it comes at a price. And if you continue to do that, it's really hard to get healthy for some people. And so she really had to start looking at, okay, I think I'm going to have to make a change in my work, which can be really scary. But sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves and say, is this in alignment with me? Is this supporting my health goals, or is this making me sick? And so she was able to make some changes and find another position that was less demanding. And she's just doing so much better now. It's a slow process. We're still working on it, but it's those types of things where they can make a huge impact if we just be really honest about where am I at and what is truly going on, and then what is within my control that I can make some changes and start implementing to feel better. So there's a lot of examples like that with people. So
And to your point from earlier, I just even as you're going through it, it's not as hard as some people may think, right? It's just a matter of getting into alignment. And how many times have we heard consistency is the key? And consistency is the key, because if you're doing it on a repeated basis, it becomes much easier. I'm a personal testament to that. So thank
and
you,
it
Brooke,
helps you be
for
more resilient.
yeah.
When you get these foundations down and you're consistent with them, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's going to be a day where you don't, but your body is really resilient because you've been doing that work and you've got that rhythm going, and it's going to be more forgiving. You're not going to get sick as easy. You're not going to run into those situations where it just derails you when you have a life event come up or something happen. You're going to be able to weather that stress easier because your nervous system, that muscle you're working with, your parasympathetic nervous system, is going to be stronger. And so it does make a big difference.
I absolutely love it. One of the questions, Brooke, shifting gears on you here, that I love to ask of just about everybody that comes onto the podcast is, what is one of your biggest failures or perceived failures or regrets? And how did you overcome it? And what did it teach you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I really have learned was not having enough structure in my business when I very first started, and how that would support my health as well. So I basically was kind of a one-man show solopreneur, building my business, and didn't have as much systems in place, I should say, to really help take the pressure off me having to do everything. And back to the energetic alignment piece, when I learned my human design and started understanding I'm a non-energy type, I don't have the capacity to necessarily do an output of 10-hour days. And so just learning that and understanding how to do things differently, that really created a lot of struggle for me, and having to revamp my business and how I'm doing things, that if I would have done it differently to begin with, I think I could have saved myself a lot of headache with that. So
And I love the fact that you brought human design into the fold. For those of you as you're listening, if you're thinking what that is, it's a quick test that literally takes no more than, I don't know, a minute or two, that gives you huge depth into how you operate and why you operate the way that you do. So much so that you're able to then interpret it to say, okay, I didn't know that why I enjoy doing X, right? Maybe to recharge. There's something specific that you enjoy doing. And when you look at things through the human design lens, it's very telling. You realize that, oh my gosh, I love doing that because it actually is what I need, what I strive for. And it's something that's built innately in every single one of us. I learned that in conversation and in working with Brooke, and it was quite an eye opener. So
yeah.
thank you for that, Brooke. Are there any parting thoughts that you have for our audience today? This has been a very informative episode. We covered so much, so much in terms of things that folks can immediately take away and start playing with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway for me is just taking your power back when it comes to your health, and really knowing that you have the control, you have the ability to shift your health at any point in your life. And it doesn't have to be a major overhaul. It can be a very slow, simple start of just basic things you can implement. And over time, those will give you positive feedback and help you feel better so you have more capacity to do something next. So just start somewhere, and really thinking about also, I mean, especially for your audience, who I know are busy professionals and very driven. And a lot of times we put that first instead of really also taking care of ourselves and that self-care and your health. And if we do that for too long, it comes at a price at the end. And so the sooner you can really make that effort to build in taking care of yourself while you're building your business, while you're building that success, you're going to actually be able to enjoy yourself a lot more when you get older, and not be dealing with sick care versus healthcare on the front end. So yeah, that would be my other advice.
Brooke, this is very, very powerful. I know that everything that you said, everything that we've said in this conversation, somebody really needed and needs to hear it. So for our listeners, first of all, thank you, Brooke, for being here with us today. And as you're listening to this episode in particular, my ask of you is please share it with someone that you love and care, so that they too may identify what is the next thing for them that perhaps they need to focus on. Because listen, we all have loved ones in our life. We all have people that we want everyone to be healthy. Share it with one or two or more people so that they can start thinking about what is it that they're already doing? How can they continue to augment and enhance the way they run life and just the way they do life? Because at the end of the day, it's a game. Let's have some fun playing it. Life is not all that long. And so if we don't find enjoyment, what are we really doing? And then the other thing, please let us know what was the one thing that stood out for you the most by rating this episode and putting in the comments, what is the one thing that Brooke might have said that stood out to you in such a meaningful way where you know deeply that one thing might as well just change your life. So let's do all that. And until next time, stay tuned for your next episode of Your Business, Your Next Level.
Thank you for joining us on Your Business, Your Next Level podcast, where it is all about helping you make more, keep more, and elevating your business to the next level. To learn more, make sure you head over to www.podcast.extelstra.com and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Again, that's podcast.excelstra.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.